Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Have you ever thought about what would happen if, like, a global organization, one steeped in tradition, suddenly had to deal with a totally different kind of leader, like someone completely unexpected?
It's a wild thought, right? And that's exactly what Dante dives into in his novel, Francesca.
Francesca, a novel, yeah.
He takes this idea of a woman becoming pope and uses it to explore how tradition and change clash. It really gets you thinking about, what authority means and the nature of faith in the modern world.
For sure. It's a contemporary fiction novel, so it feels very relevant. Dissonant really captures what it might be like for the Vatican in the 21st century, dealing with this huge shift. If you're into stories that challenge the norm, that explore faith in a changing world, and feature these really unique leaders, well, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives like this one.
Today we're looking at Francesca. This novel asks, what if a woman became pope? I mean, that's never happened before. We have a link to the book down in the description if you want to check it out. We won't spoil anything major, but we'll definitely be talking about some of the big themes, like leadership, faith, and the future of the church.
And even though it's fiction, the questions the book asks feel super relevant to what's going on in the world today. The struggle between tradition and progress, the challenges of leading a global organization, and what it means to have faith when you're responsible for so much. So if you've ever wondered about how religious institutions change or what happens when someone totally shakes things up, well, this deep dive is for you. Let's start with the main character, Jessica Simon. Her story is pretty amazing.
Yeah, Jessica Simon. Her path to maybe becoming pope begins in a very unexpected place. She was the mayor
Wait, really?
of Springfield.
Wow, that's quite a jump.
Right. And the book even mentions how surprised her seminary classmates were when they found out about her past. But her reason for joining the church was really simple. She just wanted to follow Jesus. It shows how strong her faith is right from the beginning.
I see. So that experience as mayor, I imagine that shaped how she sees leadership and faith, right? The book also mentions how important her mentors were, Father John and Teresa Dess, her spiritual director. It seems like they played a big role in her journey.
Absolutely. And then she gets appointed Archbishop of St. Louis, and this is where we see how her experience as mayor really comes into play. She brought a practical approach to managing the archdiocese's finances. She even helped local parishes balance their budgets.
Interesting. So it wasn't all about, like, the spiritual side of things. She also had a plan for the practical side.
Exactly. And she didn't stop there. She really pushed for community outreach, focusing on issues like poverty. She wanted the church to be more involved in helping people, not just preaching.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like she really wanted to put faith into action.
Yeah.
So her success in St. Louis, that leads to her becoming a cardinal, right?
Right. And then suddenly Pope Francis II dies. No one saw it coming. This throws the church into this process of choosing a new pope, the conclave.
It must have been chaotic.
Oh, for sure.
So what happens next?
Well, Jessica Simon, who is now Cardinal Francesca, gets elected pope.
Wow, the first woman pope. That's a huge turning point.
It is. And the book captures how monumental this is, but it also makes you think about what happens next. How does she deal with all the different opinions and groups within the church?
Yeah, that's got to be tough. The church has so many different viewpoints. How does she navigate all that?
Well, the book introduces us to Cardinal Penhoff. He's kind of like the figurehead for the conservative side of the church. He's against any big changes, any reforms.
I see. So he's kind of like the opposite of Francesca in a way.
In many ways, yeah. And his opposition to her isn't just because she's a woman. It's more about his whole view of how the church should be. He's very traditional. The book even talks about his past. He had a difficult youth and found his way to the church thanks to this very progressive priest, Archbishop Ivan Panov, interestingly enough.
It's funny how life works out like that, huh? It sounds like his conservatism might be because of how much the church helped him.
Yeah, maybe. It adds another layer to his character, showing he's not just this one-dimensional opponent.
Right, he has his reasons. So how did people react to Francesca being elected? Was everyone happy about it?
Well, a lot of people were excited. It felt like a breath of fresh air, a sign of progress. But of course, the tension between the progressive and conservative sides was still there. It was like this undercurrent.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how does Francesca try to unite everyone? What's her approach?
She focuses on what she sees as the most important message of Jesus, the one about loving God and loving your neighbor. Her vision is for the church to actively help people who are suffering, especially the poor.
So like a more active role in the world.
Exactly. And she decides to call Vatican III, a huge gathering of church leaders.
Wow, that's a big deal. It's only happened twice before, right?
Exactly. She wants to re-examine the church's purpose and make it more relevant to today's world. It's a bold move, but it shows how serious she is about change.
But I can imagine that not everyone was happy about this, right?
Oh, definitely. The conservative side pushed back hard. They thought the church was focusing too much on worldly things and forgetting about its spiritual mission. They wanted to stick to traditional doctrines. It was a real clash of ideologies.
So how does Francesca handle this? What's her leadership style like?
Well, even as Pope, she remains very hands-on. Just like when she was mayor, she likes to be directly involved. The book even has scenes where she visits a homeless shelter in Rome and talks with the people there.
So she's not just giving orders from the Vatican.
No, she wants to experience things firsthand. She also travels around the world, meeting with people of different faiths. It's all about building bridges and showing inclusivity, something quite different from past popes.
I like that. It sounds like she's really trying to modernize the church. But it can't be easy, right? Dealing with all that opposition.
Oh, it's incredibly challenging. Keeping Vatican III going amidst all the pushback was tough. And on top of that, she has personal issues to deal with, like her son Josh. It's a lot for one person to handle.
It really shows how much pressure she was under. The book mentions a vision she had of Jesus when she was young. That sounds like that was really important to her.
It seems to be a source of strength and guidance for her, especially in difficult times. And she also has her husband, Michael, who supports her through everything. These personal aspects make her feel more human, despite her huge role. And her spiritual director, Teresa Das, becomes even more crucial during tough times, especially after her son, Josh, dies. It shows how important it is to have someone to talk to guide you, even when you're the Pope. So, what's Francesca's lasting impact? How does the book portray the future of the Church after her papacy?
Well, book shows Vatican III as a turning point. It shifts the church's focus toward community engagement and helping those in need. There's this really powerful example of Father Carlos's parish in Sao Paulo that completely changed how they operate to help their local community.
It's a great illustration of the changes that Vatican III set in motion. And then, sadly, Pope Francesca dies unexpectedly. The book describes how people all over the world mourn her death. It shows just how big of an impact she made in such a short time.
Sounds like she really left her mark. So what happens to the church after she's gone?
Angelo Salzano, the one she appointed to lead Vatican III, is elected Pope Francis III. He's committed to continuing what Francesca started, suggesting that her vision might actually survive.
That's good to hear. But is everything smooth sailing from there?
Unfortunately, no. There's an attempt to assassinate Pope Francis III, and it's linked to these super conservative groups. It shows that the opposition to Francesca's reforms is still very much alive and dangerous.
Wow, that's intense. So despite all this, the new pope still tries to carry on Francesca's legacy.
Exactly. The book ends with him continuing the reforms and pushing for more inclusivity even though he's facing huge opposition. It seems like Francesca's influence, even though her time was short, really changed the direction of the church.
That's pretty powerful. It shows that even one person can make a huge difference. So what do you think Francesca tells us about the world today?
I think it highlights this tension between holding on to tradition and needing to adapt, especially for organizations like the church. It asks us to think about what good leadership looks like when there are so many different opinions and how important it is to have a strong moral compass.
Yeah, and it reminds us that even people in positions of power are human. They deal with personal struggles and loss. And Francesca also explores how faith can help us cope with those things, both on a global scale and in our own lives. It's fiction, but it speaks to real issues we face today.
It definitely makes you think about how institutions, especially religious ones, can stay relevant in a constantly changing world. It raises questions about adaptation, inclusivity, and what faith means in our modern society.
For sure. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Francesca. Thanks for joining us.
We'd love to hear what you thought was most surprising or interesting about Francesca's story. Leave a comment below with your favorite part of our discussion.
And let us know what you think about the book's themes. Do they connect with what's happening in faith communities today? Hit that like button, share this deep dive with your friends, and tell us what other books or topics you want us to explore in future episodes.
We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, everyone.